Welcome to Quantum Kinetics First Diffusion Season 2, Episode 3. I'm here with
Bryton Rodgers, Chief Production Officer of Quantum Kinetics.
Welcome back, Bryton. It's good to have you with us today. What are we going to be talking about?
Got a few things to talk about today, kind of leading off of the last time I was on here talking to you. This time without the whiskey, but we'll see how it goes.
Henry McKenna was delicious, so we're just going to have to stick with Red Bull today.
Fine. The last time I was on here, we talked a bit about the ether and the direct C and Dayton Miller, and I think we're going to keep riffing off of that line of thought by moving on to kind of some alternate presentations of the nature of the electron compared to what we were taught in grade school.
Sure.
And for some of us, college. But then we're going to be working a bit to tie that with the topic of catastrophe theory and strange attractors. One thing I'm particularly not informed or knowledgeable about at this point, but working on it.
Well, we have some visual demonstrations today to help the audience see what that catastrophe theory is all about.
Perfect, because I'm a visual learner. I think a lot of people out there are too. That helps a lot when we can put things in those terms.
Yeah.
And then we'll be kind of diving into the topics of Faraday, Ampere, Maxwell, Hertz, maybe a little heavy side, and tying those topics together to talk about the nature of gravitation, which is really critical to understanding what's going on inside of our reactors.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, it's important to understand the basics of electricity and our founding fathers, which were Maxwell, Faraday, Hertz, and a few others. So we'll be talking about that today, and I'm really excited to get started on that. But first, we have to take a short commercial break for our video sponsor today. So we will see you in 60 seconds. So we'll see you on the other side. Do you want to learn the secrets of cold nuclear fusion? Well, first, you got to learn the basics and do what I did. I use Brilliant.org. Brilliant offers learning courses in scientific thinking, data visualization, probability and chance, thinking and code, and my personal favorite, digital circuits. After all, the key to controlling cold nuclear fusion comes from oscillating electrons. Each dedicated course category offered by Brilliant.org has several subcategories, allowing for a wide range of learning opportunities for any age, from 13 all the way up to 113. Additionally, Brilliant offers an amazing selection of digital interactive tools, puzzles, questions, tables, and daily awards, allowing for the accelerated growth learning advancements of any user. Honestly, it feels like a digital interactive video game. Best of all, you can learn at your own pace, too. There is a special offer by Brilliant, which allows our viewers 20% off annual premium subscriptions. This special offer gives you unlimited daily access, everything on Brilliant. Just scan the QR code. So what are you waiting for? Fly over and make yourself a free account and check it out for yourself. And join me in learning the secrets of the universe with Brilliant.org/QKC. With our knowledge levels combined, we can save the world together. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the commercial. We're really excited that we got our first sponsor. And without further ado, Bryton, let's jump into the podcast. So what is the electron in your mind's eye?
That's been a really difficult one over time. I know in school they taught me that it was this kind of inexplicable ball of material that happened to have charge and exert force on other things that were of opposite charge, particularly the proton. But as I dug into the history of how we came to understand these things and even discovered the electron in the first place, it asks a lot more fundamental questions, and a lot of those questions have been getting looked at by quantum physicists in their particle accelerators and colliders.
What is the electron to you, though? Like, I know, like, you read a textbook and it's a negatively charged particle, but what is the electron to you in your mind's eye?
I think of it as an etheric perturbation. It's a jiggle or wiggle in the ether. It's basically a different form of oscillation than light is. And it's kind of our most basic point or originator of disturbances that we are really able to observe in space that kind of stays alive or lasting inside of physical space.
Are you saying that the electron emits a wave, or the electron is a wave?
Well,
because now we're getting into like
you can get to the bottom of that. It's like what's matter? What's a wave? And those things have been kind of
good questions.
Very, very importantly tied together as I'm kicking something.
Yeah.
Roughly equivalent for how we deal with those things in mathematics at a fundamental level. But I think that the thing I'm most concerned about is how to understand the behavior of an electron in order to engineer things that are useful. I think of it in terms of almost exclusively in terms of the perturbation or the wave form within the ether.
Have you ever heard of something called a Bessel function?
Yes, I have. We've talked about that a bunch of times.
So if you were to describe a Bessel function for the audience, how would you go about describing the Bessel function of an electron? Because it's definitely waving. We know this because there's a thing called a Zitter-Deweyum. Zitter-Deweyum is something like, the scientists have calculated that inside an electron, the electron being this negatively charged ball thing in the middle, right? And we know that the electron has an electrostatic charge E, which is the field lines. We also know that it has a little magnetic field in it too. So the question is if it's wobbling back and forth in this field and it's creating these fields, what's giving its energy to make it wobble to create the fields, right? Because Faraday's law says that if an electron's flowing through a wire, it makes a magnetic field. So it's an AC wave or something. It's flowing in here, right? Inside?
I think there's a flow. You can't really have electrical or electrostatic changes without having an associated current flow.
Correct.
So those things are so closely tied together that I am of the opinion that when you get to that scale, these stable perturbations that we call electrons, which we can't really lock down on where they're at.
Because of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, it's kind of a probability matrix of where it's going to be with what energy.
Yeah. We just know that there's a certain amount of fluctuation going on inside of this radius around an atomic nucleus. So,
do you want to know what Bohr said about that?
Go for it.
Bohr said that this is a simple harmonic resonator. And when Bohr was having an argument with Einstein way back in the day, Einstein said, God doesn't play dice. There is no probability that the electron's going to do this or do that. It's just an analog, smooth current system, not a quantum jumping. And Bohr said, well, stop telling God what to do. So there's something jittering inside the is jittering the electron, which makes it do jumping in the atom.
Yeah, something's exciting that little tank circuit of the ether. And once it gets excited, it has to keep getting excited or it'll kind of
annihilate,
resistively dampen itself out over time and kind of just, and that has a lot to do with the topic of the Bessel.
Yeah, the Bessel function. So, he forgot to turn his phone off. That's okay. We all do it. So
I forgot I had two phones.
Just so the audience knows, in our circuits with quantum kinetics, which we use pulsing action, and it's very funny and very interesting that on November 5th, 2024, Quantum Kinetics Corporation did a press release about how we were able to hold 200 million degree temperatures for 24 hours and we broke the world record. and we were able to radioactive decontaminate uranium-234, 235, and 238, also make thorium, tungsten, and lead. Literally after that press release that we did, we noticed a whole bunch of hot fusion companies switching from continuous power mode to pulse power mode. We saw that and we documented that.
They were doing that a little bit with the Z-pinch stuff, but that's been around for decades, right?
Yeah, Z-pinch is actually one of the older ones, actually, of the fusion. I think Z-pinch was even before tokamak, actually, because it was just, that was all they knew how to do with the firing high voltage.
Yeah, useful for proving a point that fusion can happen, but inside of plasma, but not really useful for commercial purposes.
And that's why the quantum effect is the probability of fusion during pulsing action, just like the electron pulsing back and forth with the positron. We can increase the factor of nuclear fusion on demand by doing the pulsing. And that's continuous mode, not preferable, but doing pulse action is what you want. And here at Quantum Kinetics, what we do is we take that pulsing action, and let's just back up 1 second. If we have two electrons, or let's have a proton that has electrons floating around it, right? If we try to bring them together and get across the Coulomb barrier, which this is the Coulomb barrier, it's the charge repulsion, right? These two atoms cannot force together because the field lines interact with each other and they bounce off, right? So what we've done at Quantum Kinetics is we found a way, we're the first, to find a way to de-shield or decouple the charge potential and phase shift the atom out of phase with itself and other atoms around it. And so now we can put the nucleus and change the nucleus however we want and do fusion without the field lines interacting with the situation. And then we turn our circuit off, and then the field lines come back and back into normal mode. So this is called quantum superposition, and it's also called quantum tunneling. What we do here at Quantum Kinetics. So, and by the way, and we're going to get into this, but that's technically gravity, and we'll jump more into that with this concept called strange attractors,
right?
Which is catastrophe theory. So let's talk about what is the baseline unit for catastrophe theory. What's the premise?
I would say that I started off reading that book that you'd recommended to me that was written back in the 70s.
Oh, actually, I think the first version was way back in the 40s, and then there was a couple editions to the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
But it's
so
gone
I got
through
a later
many
revision.
And it's interesting, the book I have, the older version, is different than the book you have, even though it has the same cover. So the text and the pictures have changed slightly over time.
Yeah, they changed the diagrams that they were using to talk about strange attractors.
Isn't that weird?
Well, it's an important topic, but I think a lot of where people have actually applied this concept is in fluid dynamics.
Oh, and that's what Bessel functions are used for.
The transition from a laminar flow state to a chaotic turbulent state of flow inside of systems,
yes.
Which is exactly what we've been talking about with the ether. So it's had a huge impact on how I think about the nature of the electron.
Yeah.
And if you're interested, just go read the book. Like, you'll get a lot out of it if you have a little background.
Yeah.
But that ties in well to this topic of strange attractors as well as catastrophes, which are essentially, when you look at a multidimensional space, the gradients or changes in the passive states of fields vary greatly, and sometimes the transition from one location in physical space to another is not a smooth transition. It's as if, by changing my location from point A to point B in physical space creates a turbulent state in the thing that's moving, right? Well, what is also, I think, a good extension of that concept is that occurs not only when you're moving around in physical space, it occurs when you're changing your field state in a single space. And I think that applies well to the topic of resonant cavities and ties in with what we're doing.
Is that like it, just so I'm clear, what you're saying is if I move this particle that has these field lines, right? Let's just say this is a magnetic field line on the outside, and inside this line here is an electrostatic field line.
Right.
If I move this particle, there's actually like a cresting wave, kind of like your shirt, right? The logo of Quantum Kinetics, you're creating the red shift or the blue shift, right? Is that what you're kind of saying? It changes the way the universe is perturbated or changed, or
we have this idea, this concept of a spring constant, right, where you have a smooth change in applied force and you have a smooth change in the distance that spring is compressed or extended, but that's an idealization that occurs within a narrow range of the actual possible number of lengths of that spring. If you release it within that range, it'll go nice, really even dissipation, kind of like when you look at a Bessel curve. If you measure from the middle of that Bessel function and go out, you release a spring and it behaves in that way.
Sure, yeah.
That's your laminar flow.
That's for just two systems, though, right?
Right.
That's A and B point.
Yeah, that's between point A and point B. We're still talking about electrons.
Yeah.
And the Dirac seat.
Yeah,
so the ether, that's not necessarily actively an electron. So
it's a potential, though.
So it's sitting there in potential. It hasn't been turned into an electron yet. You haven't stretched the spring or compressed it enough and suddenly released it in order to allow the electron formation to occur. So this is a catastrophe event where you essentially over oscillate this base material and suddenly you have a condensation of something that sticks around for a lot longer than quarks or gluons.
So just sort of the audience. So if I'm understanding what you're saying is, if I have a simple oscillator that's a spring with A and B point, right, a fixed point, and it's oscillating. If there's an outside, and this is to say it's constant, it's a laminar flow that's smooth, not a chaotic one, just a smooth flow, like water down a rock.
Yeah, it's like light going through space.
Okay, great. So now, what happens if, another stream hits it? Now there's a different oscillation in the springs.
Then you have turbulence.
And now we have a turbulent flow, and then chaos and catastrophe can occur in this closed loop system, thus spawning, these new particles, like an electron.
I think that's a good explanation for how I picture this behaving at this point in time. Yeah.
So is it crazy to think that maybe different? Oh, and here's another thing too. Instead of a simple system of two fixed points, what if we add another spring with another point to it? So it's a 3-point spring oscillator.
Well, now you're making things really chaotic. Well, we talked about that too with the 2-body and 3-body systems, with trying to solve for stable gravitational dynamics, and that strikes me as quite important, especially because if you go and were to read the patent online,
well, yeah, there's a few patents,
you'd pick up on a couple of mentions of.
And what we do here is to induce cold nuclear fusion on demand using the ARC reactor fusion on demand technology. Is that we create a situation where the magnetic flux, the electrostatic flux, which, by the way, those are the basic units. Those are fundamental units of the universe, and they are massless. Just so you know, everyone, a magnetic field is massless. An electrostatic field is massless, right? And these are the base units of Maxwell's theories of permittivity and permeability. And there's another thing called the impedance of free space. And that's a resistance. That's 377 ohms. And that's constant throughout the entire universe. That's actually what gives the speed of light its actual speed limit. And if there was some magical way to make the universe have a different impedance value of resistance, you could make the electron go faster than the speed of light, or you can make photons go faster than the speed of light, which is a very interesting thought experiment that we actually...
Tunneling? Huh?
Yep. Good job.
That's
You finished my thought.
I felt like you were trying to get me to say that word.
That was easy.
Yeah, here we go.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It's like if you can manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe, which is an electrostatic field, a magnetic field, in a very specific way, and not do brute force, bulk ion heating plasmas. You can do cold nuclear fusion plasmas and induce cold nuclear fusion whenever you want, wherever you want, and at what intensity you want. And I'm going to say this as well before we move on to the next thing, which is basically radios, is that if you use brute force methods to do nuclear fusion, you are always going to spawn fast neutrons. And I'm going to tell you, fast neutrons, we do not want to make an industry of generating electricity and energy using fast neutrons, because fast neutrons are inherently dangerous and they destruct everything, including the reactor walls, including everything in the universe, including biology. So the industry of nuclear fusion needs to be grounded in something safe, that is reliable and provable and consistent, which we have done here at Quantum Kinetics. And that is one of the reasons why we're able to do it, is because we use the fundamental processes of a radio. Like, for example, when you tune into resonance with a radio, you have created a synthetic strange attractor moment. Because one of the things I want to mention about strange attractors, Bryton, is that when you have a strange attractor, you actually have a harmonious relationship between two units. And what I mean by that is this: if you have a male that is attracted to a female, and you have a female that's attracted to a male, you guys normally would go on a date and have coffee and start hanging out, and then you form a relationship, and that becomes a stable gravitational attraction of stability, also known as what Bohr said is a simple harmonic oscillating system. And those are the prerequisites for radio. Those are the prerequisites for gravity. These are the prerequisites for even atom stability to exist.
It's kind of a very fundamental dynamic in the universe. You have physical space: up, down, left, right, forward, backwards, and backwards in time.
In and out.
In and out. We need more whiskey for this.
There's no whiskey on this episode.
Let's not talk about my dating life.
Well, when you're an inventor and you're working hard on trying to change the world, it's a hard life, right?
It is a hard life.
So the out, up, down, so the spatial degrees of freedom.
Wave functions. You have your spring oscillations.
Yes.
You have Bessel function.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally everywhere.
Yeah.
But it's always two contrasted pairs that are kind of a fundamental part of our cognitive firmware in a way. We frame things by contrast, and your electromagnetic forces are no different. The things interacting, or particles interacting with these electromagnetic forces, follow gradients with their behavior.
Good. Yes.
Which is an incredibly important aspect of all this.
So, yes, the gradients of, like, for example, a magnetic field has a north-south. An electrostatic field has a positive-negative.
Mm-hmm.
A photon is a positive light and a negative light. An electron is positive mass and negative mass.
Right. So I'm familiar with the positron-electron pairs that were discovered by
cloud chambers.
That was a cloud chamber thing. When
Actually,
I saw the two spirals going out.
Totally.
But they also have different mass or charge mass ratio. That's all you can tell from the spiral shape.
Correct.
That's important.
That is a very philosophical discussion too. That the spiraling of the electron is different than the spiraling of the positron. One has more energy and goes one direction,
right,
and the other has less energy and goes the other direction.
Right. It's there's clearly an imbalanced system here, and what happens when you have imbalanced systems? Well, maybe there's a third thing involved here. Maybe there's
the gradient that you just mentioned.
The gradient
between.
I'm not tying it right now.
Oh, so between.
I wasn't prepared for that talking point.
Between between the north and the south
Mm.
is what? If you have
Tension.
a north and a south,
right.
you have what's in the middle here.
It's the stretched spring.
Right, but is it new?
The-
Isn't it this? If I have if I throw a ball up in the air
Mm.
and it goes up and then it comes down, it does a parabola, right? But when
Right.
I throw the ball up and it reaches the maximum point of the parabola, what is it doing? What's it actually?
It's still.
Frozen.
It's frozen. Yeah.
It doesn't move. It's impedance matched. It's
Right, that's a good
impedance
way of
matched.
describing that.
Right
so
there.
it's the impedance matching in that midpoint between the oscillating positron electron pair
Bingo.
is the ether that's being disturbed, but it's also in tension. Equally, well, debatable. We were talking about the cloud chambers with the electrons flying and positrons flying a little
Right.
differently. So, so you've got this tension between the two in space. But what the nature of that tension is, it's hard to say. It's like the question between the wave and the particle.
You mean like an electron versus a photon?
What's a wave? Well, it's matter moving. Well, what's a particle? Oh, it's something that interacts with waves. Okay, this is kind of circular. Like your two body problem is stable, but when you realize there's more to this equation,
I'm going to give you a hint.
you start.
Are you ready for
Go
the
for
hint?
it. Yeah, let's see where you're.
So you ever heard of the
this.
thing called sine, cosine, tangent in mathematics? So
Yeah.
what you said is, if a photon is a wave
Mhm.
and it hits an electron and it makes it move,
Right.
it made a mass particle, which is light potential, move. How did the photon, which has a very, very, very infinitesimally small mass and inertia to it, make this huge ball electron thingy move? Like photoelectric effect, right? If I shine a light at a cathode metal and it's blue light, let's say, and I'm flashing light at it, I make the circuit move electrons in the circuit. How does this dinky light that has no mass basically make this huge ball like move in a wire? How is that even possible?
With pressure gradients.
And can you go deeper into that?
In which direction?
Positive or negative?
Right. So things happen to be impressed by gradients that they're exposed to, and you have these concepts of resonators, and anything from free space to this can here could be a resonator if you stimulate it with a voltage spike, and you set your oscilloscope up next on it, and you're like, oh, now it's ringing like a bell. And everything does that in some form. They're responsive to different rates or different magnitudes of hitting them with the hammer of voltage to make them ring. And they also have different impedances, so they tend to damp that out and dissipate that energy over time at different rates.
Correct.
And I think that has a lot to do when you place something into that tension space, like the ether.
Right.
It's like you're hitting it with that kind of you're hitting the ether with the hammer of the electron positron pair, forming and then dissipating, but in the process you're creating a lot of chaos in that ether, and you get into this topic of the strange attractors.
Correct.
Which create catastrophe events which spawn new strange attractors. So it's kind of this self-building, self-reinforcing interaction that occurs on a very low level everywhere all the time.
So would you say, with that being said, which that makes sense to me, would you then go as far to say that there is no Big Bang? Like, okay, just back up for a second. In my mind, if a physicist comes to me and says, I'm in their class and I say, hey, tell me the secrets of the universe. They say, well, here's the first law. Nothing can be created or destroyed. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm in a closed loop circuit box. Nothing can be created or destroyed. Kirchhoff's law, all good. And then the next thing they say is, then there was this event called the Big Bang and everything was created in one magical moment. like my brain just kind of cracked in half like a bowling ball.
Two
Just,
stories
like,
that are 180 degrees out from each other.
Like so what you just said about the perturbation of like waves going from photon to electron to electron to photon, this relationship, it seems symbiotic
Right.
and in balance. And sometimes there'll be, a wave oscillation that causes two electrons to like swirl in and make something new. And this perturbation, this catastrophe is possible at fundamental small interval potential amplitudes.
Right.
So
it's kind of an interference pattern.
Yeah. And so if it's an interference pattern, can you not create waves that like amplitude on each other momentarily and then cross over? I mean, like the resonator thing you were talking about, the can.
Well, a good one that has everything to do with this topic is, I don't remember the location I saw this in or who did it, but if some lab somewhere, somebody will figure it out. Maybe you'll find it and put it in the links.
I'll look it up.
Section.
We'll look it up.
They essentially use this concept of like cymatics with these plates vibrating, and you have the sand condensing on that plate in forms and staying there stably underneath stable resonant patterns.
Right.
They extended that concept into the topic of light, sound, light, vibrations.
Yeah.
So they shined a bunch of lasers into this single point and actually used lasers to condense matter that stayed after the lasers were turned off, I think.
Wow.
So this ties in very well, because this is just right next door, I think, to some of the stuff we're talking about.
Cold nuclear fusion.
Yeah, cold nuclear fusion. I'm betting those lasers had it pretty hot, if any of the other laser experiments I'm familiar with have anything to
here's a thought.
Say.
Here's a thought. Like, let's just say that we're pointing lasers at this thing, this ball thing, right? And I'm shooting lasers at different angles. And the laser wave fronts are coming in at different angles. And they have different phases, like sine here, cosine there, tangent there, and all this stuff.
And it's coherent light, so it's easy to predict where those waves will be interacting.
And how they would make whatever is in the middle, that spring coefficient that you were mentioning, that gradient between the two, would make it, gain mass potentially. I mean, because really, remember, E equals mc squared just basically means that the energy in the form of mass can be converted into photon energy that radiates out at the speed of light, which that's all it says. And if you say that in an equation, it also means that you can pulse light into an object and it will gain mass, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we're seeing in our experiments with our devices.
Correct. I mean, we turn the voltage to 30, we get a lot of carbon. You turn the voltage to 60, you get a lot of, iron, nickel, magnesium, aluminum. Right. And you turn up to 90, you get tungsten, thorium, lead, all these other really exotic heavy elements, and even uranium too. So it does make sense that...
And it's interesting because our experiments where we've reduced the content of uranium, it's like we're setting a resonant point to determine what's condensing, and it'll actually change everything else that's in that space.
Correct.
Down the ladder as well. So it's a really cool dynamic. But
that sounds like gravity to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not how most people think of gravity. Thinking of gravity in terms of an attractor that is not necessarily purely associated with quantity of matter makes you see the parallels in a lot more places.
Well, it's really interesting, and to kind of go to the next point too, is that Michael Faraday in his journal wrote that he believed very strongly that there was something fundamentally connected intimately with a coil of wire and gravity. He wrote in his diary or journal that is something that I would love to explore, but I don't have the resources to do it, or do I know how to do that. But he knew in his gut that coils of wire, capacitance, and resistance in a circuit have a very strong correlation to a gravitational flux field. fast forward 100 years or more, right? Here we are talking on a podcast with you guys on, the global stage about, resonant tank circuits, chaos theory, resonant circuits, radios, and now gravity is coming into the equation. I think I'm very honored to be even having this conversation with you, Bryton.
It's really cool to get the opportunity to talk about some of this stuff or all of it, because I know I spent a lot of time being a no-lifer, just sitting in front of my computer late into the night trying to dig through every source I could find. And I went back and read the history of the theories of electricity and ether and electricity and magnetism by Whittaker. I don't remember the exact title. It's been a while, but that was a heavy read. But just through sheer determination and being willing to not be talking to anybody at all for extended periods of time, I managed to sort through a lot of these things and had a lot of these thoughts. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have anybody else saying the same thing,
right,
or to talk to about the topics until we got back in touch.
Right.
And I learned that you're
doing the same thing,
fusion work, and I was like, holy shit, like that's exactly what I want to be working towards. But I have myself a 9-to-5 right now, so so I wasn't.
Well, and you're talking about Euro's journey of going off the non-beaten path, where everyone in the world is going to their job and making, eating the green grass and, just doing their day to day. But you took your head and went across the fence of the farm. I was like, is there another gate somewhere? Maybe there's another field somewhere. I'm going to survey it.
Right. And I mean, I think it's,
you found it.
I certainly found something interesting. Who knows if it's what I originally thought was going to happen or come of all of this stuff, because I can't possibly plan that far ahead. My conscious brain isn't doing all the calculations to get me from point A to point B.
Which is interesting because
go with the flow, baby. And sometimes things really work out and you're like, wow, that really, really worked out in a way I didn't perceive coming my way, but that's perfect.
Yeah.
So, which is a cool thing to go through.
And I'm going to say that it's when you're on this journey of doing something that's different than everybody else, including scientists, we're doing something different than, in some way we're doing the same thing. We have circuits and we have pulsing and we do this and that, and we're trying to do fusion and we're doing fusion, but we're coming at it from a different perspective. And to some people, it's that's wild and crazy, and I don't believe you, and the things you're saying are wild. And actually, it's if you're going to make a discovery, these are the prerequisites for it. You have to be the outlier. You have to be the person that's not going with the crowd.
Well, and I think a lot of the crowd has been doing some pretty valuable basic research where you get a lot of this stuff that a lot of electrical engineers and antenna engineers take for granted, instead of stopping to look at it and be like, oh, it behaves differently because of approximations. And you really need to ask the questions to make incredible advances. And this is the pattern through history, is you question the basic principles, find the inconsistencies, and try and figure out a different way of thinking about this that will make those inconsistencies be consistent. And then you open up a world of possibilities of things to do.
And you only work with the elements that you know, right? For example, James Clerk Maxwell discovered the speed of light through an amazing thing that he only had so many tools to work with, right? He knew the permeability and he knew the permittivity.
Right.
He knew those things. And so then what he did was he just square rooted it to find C. And he found out that those baseline unit values of how fast, or not how fast, but how the electric field interacts with Faraday's, electricity, and then his magnetic field, he just used those baseline units and he determined the speed of light before it had actually ever been experimentally determined, right? So you have to use the things that you know are true and just search.
It's the underappreciated aspects of the scientific process, I think, is that if you can predict a lot of stuff, but as long as it's not something that you can test. You can't really, not something you can directly test. You kind of have to take it with a grain of salt until somebody comes up with a different equation that you either think looks pretty or it does something for you. And that's just kind of the way that the scientific world progresses. People kind of get tied into the idea that the Earth's flat or round or the shape of a donut or banana or whatever you want to say. And then somebody's like, wait, I have evidence over here. I did surveys and I found out that the Great Salt Lake has a curve to it. If I don't know what people did for that whole thing. Somebody claimed it. And there's always this up, down, forward, backward. It's another little oscillating tank system, but it's going somewhere.
Yeah.
It's clearly not going from nothing to nothing. It doesn't look like that, at least to me.
Well, I'm going to just say this real quick about what you said.
I waxed philosophical for a moment there.
But... Yeah, I'm going to bring it back. Like you're not wrong philosophically, but in the tank circuit that you kind of mentioned there is that if you can get rid of the electrostatic field and you can get rid of the magnetic field of a system, right? Closed loop system. And this is something that we talked about on the whiteboard before we came on, is that there's something between two wires that are going current one way and current going the other way. There's this there's counter space that Eric Dollar would call counter space.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great way of thinking of it because you
totally.
That was
total
one of
credits.
the
total credits to Eric Dollar.
Much credit to Eric Dollar because he when I heard him talking about counter space one time, that idea really cemented in place, and I've found a lot of other parallels in my philosophical explorations and studies, and it very cleanly ties up some questions and gives you a place to fill in gaps when you're looking at that fundamental ether flow from a catastrophe theory standpoint and the nature of condensation.
Yeah.
So
when you say condensation, is this counter space system where, let's say, current's going one way this way and current's going one way this way, and those wires are interacting with each other, the interference pattern between the coils causes a deshielding of the electrostatic charge of the wire and the electromagnetic or the magnetic field of the wires. Does it not create this singularity moment between the two wires of counter space? I show up. It's always there, but it's right. Blanketed.
Right. It's not acting yet. Where I think if you look at what we were talking about earlier at the whiteboard with Ampere and Faraday.
Maxwell,
I keep saying Ampere because I watched a video about what he talked about more recently.
Don't call James Clerk Maxwell. Yeah. James Clerk Maxwell.
Yeah. Well, so credit goes to Faraday for the discovery of that magnetic force directing a compass when you run current through a wire.
Right.
Ampere did some experiments, and I think Faraday did these too, with the forces between charge carriers or conductors carrying current in parallel and opposing directions and how they attract and repel each other. But he also found that through experimentation, the charge carriers or current moving in the same direction collinearly apply forces on each other as well, which ties in very well with the fluid dynamics that we've been talking about.
There is that video that you showed me was really interesting because there's an aspect of basic fundamental circuits that has been completely glossed over, completely forgotten, and it's like, oh, there it is.
Right, like that's one of those things that I'm sure gets covered in very like basic intro electrical studies in college, but it's one of those things that gets glazed over. And I think probably most people are similar to me. They totally forgot about it. I don't even remember having learned about it. But it's very important when you start looking back to Maxwell's equations dealing with electrical flow as an ether dynamic. And with that flow dynamic that affects the way flow dynamics work when you try and think about it in your mind, because you have to create these structures in your mind to be able to interact with the engineering and design of these systems.
Well, that's what Richard Feynman said, that you have to be a good imaginator to understand quantum thermodynamics, because it's a very abstract and it's very convoluted, and you almost have to like imagine spaces and interactions that are not as intuitive to a classically mind sense person. And so imaginative people have a better, I wouldn't say grip on it, but because really nobody has a good grip on quantum thermodynamics. It's totally insane.
There's a lot of shooting in the dark here.
And we're just really trying to help you understand it. And I'm saying, I'm going to just say for the record, I don't know everything. I just know certain things. And I know you don't know everything. You just know certain things. And that's why we come on the show, is to try to help you guys understand that there are parts of the universe that we here at Quantum Kinetics have tapped into that are not, maybe not mainstream, but they're definitely forgotten concepts.
Right.
And it's very exciting because we're almost like rebirthing a dead phoenix from the past.
Well, there's this conference in, I want to say Germany, where they decided that since the math describes these things and what's happening, stop trying to look behind the curtain or the veil and understand what's mechanically happening in quantum mechanics. Can you think of the name of that conference?
No, is it in Munich?
I'm pulling a blank. Maybe
is it Munich? I don't know the conference name
or something.
Oh, Copenhagen is Denmark.
Copenhagen's the best.
Have you ever? The beer is really good in Denmark. I'll say that.
Right. But I thought I had always heard or read that from the various places when it came up, and I thought of that as a huge cop out. It's like saying, no, I failed to figure this one out in my head, so stop looking. I want to keep my credit as the top dog in this field and have everybody remember me forever. I don't know what was going on or what would drive that. It's like, where's your spirit of curiosity? Like, that's what got us here in the first place with all these amazing technologies and cool understandings of the world. Like, let's keep going. And it kind of put a taboo on trying to figure out ether dynamics for the next 100 years.
Well, the reason that
and here we are,
the reason that that those concepts have not been looked at, ever since the Michelson-Morley experiment, that they just stopped looking at it. They just said it doesn't exist, it's not real. Michelson-Morley didn't detect anything,
right?
And they just walked away from it. And that is like the biggest crime, I think, from my experiences of like learning this over the last 7 or 8 years, is that if you go back in history and say, why did you walk away from that? Well, as a Michelson-Morley came up negative. You're not going to try anymore? Mm-hmm. You're just going to say it's over, it's done? Like,
thankfully, Dayton Miller didn't say it was done, because that's an important
correct
piece of scientific history right there.
Yeah, and he detected that it's an oscillation. It
has to do with which part of the orbit Earth's in and which direction the Earth is spinning at or facing in its rotation at that point in time.
Phase.
Yeah, right.
Which is so funny that going back to like the sine, cosine, tangent of waves,
right?
That is like, wait a minute, hold on. Are you saying that gravity and photon waves and their phases has a lot to do with everything here?
Right.
And I say to you, absolutely.
Has to do with everything.
Absolutely. And here's a question I have for you, Bryton, as we're coming closer to the end here, is what is the boundary layer between a photon and an electron? Let's just say you have a photon or an electron right here.
A proton or an electron, or a photon and electron?
Let's just say, for simplicity, it's just an electron. And let's just say, we know for a fact that if we take 2 gamma photons and we smash them into each other at a high velocity like this, they spawn an electron. We know this for a fact. Here's my question. Wait a minute. How do 2 photons coming together spawn an electron? What is actually happening in this simple harmonic resonator circuit?
Well, I think that ties back to the catastrophe concept. but I don't think of it as having a boundary layer. I think this Coulomb barrier that we're normally talking about is it doesn't really communicate what I think is going on there.
What's missing?
Well, I think the Coulomb barrier is not so much a barrier as much as a threshold dynamic, where you have propagation of waveforms through a space, and some waveforms through a dynamic that I'm not gonna say or claim I have a deep understanding of. It creates this threshold passing event that causes an oscillator to keep oscillating in that spot. And it's like the formation of a new oscillator is a threshold event that has to do largely with voltage gradients and flow rates, because voltage gradients and flow are the two interplaying things that are happening.
Yeah.
Or pressure or tension. I know Nikola Tesla liked using the tension word instead of voltage, and I personally prefer that too.
So when an electron spawns from two photons colliding together to make this shaped object that appears to have mass.
Right. Well, when we measure, the only time we've ever seen atoms is
they're 99.
when we can use an electron microscope to basically measure the shape of an optical surface. That's we see bumps on the surface of stuff, and what else is that other than a standing wave pattern?
So let me get this straight.
It's like we can't. Like,
let me get this straight.
You got to re-ask these basic questions. I think it's important.
So let me get this straight.
Like, what's really going on there, buddy? I don't know if that exactly matches what you're describing. I think it's a very, I want to say materialist, purely a pure materialist perspective, which I don't think makes sense inside of a universe, whether it's created from a Big Bang or creation, or it's an ongoing process, which I think you mentioned earlier. But I kind of got off down a rabbit hole there.
Oh, it's okay.
Let's focus back.
That's what a gravitational flux is a gravity hole. It's basically Alice in Wonderland. You're jumping down the hole, and then everything starts happening. Like this is a discussion I had with Jason actually this morning, where we were talking about the idea of a thought stemming from some other dimension pressure on the universe. And if your thought, it pushes in, it can spawn an electron to show up, which has intention. And this is really interesting because when you look at a lightning discharge, and this is something I want to talk to you a little bit about too, is that what we've discovered with modern cameras that take millions of frames per second, or hundreds of thousands of frames per second. I mean, these cameras are the Phantom is just crazy. What we've discovered recently in the last 5 years is that the clouds have a very positive charge. They have very little electrons, but they're agitating the water. And so there's like this electrostatic gradient that you're speaking of, right? And the mass of the Earth has a lot of electrons too, but it has a huge magnetic field because of the core of the Earth, because of the Van Allen belts and all that. And so now you have this gradient fluxes occurring in this space. And what happens, what we discovered, is before the lightning strike, there is these step leaders that kind of they have tentacles, and they reach out from the clouds, and they do all this stuff. And you can see them, and they're fractal patterns.
That's a cool video. Look it up if you get the chance.
Well, link will be in the description. But as the step leaders, they call them, are coming down out of the clouds, we don't know what they are. Nobody knows what they are. I don't know what they are. Nobody knows.
I mean, they only exist for 10,000ths of a second or something crazy like that.
Ridiculous frame rate of update function. It's almost like it happens between something, right? Like between the game engine frame rate, like update function, between the frames, something comes out. Like fractal thought says, I'm going to find the path of least resistance here in this situation. And it reaches out its weird tentacles. And the moment it touches the ground, bam, all the electrons from the Earth flow through the path of least resistance to the cloud, and bam, you see it and you hear it.
Well, it's almost like one side of that charge gradient has a lot more ability to kind of explorationally reach out. Like a thinking system. Go back to the neurons growing in a petri dish, and slime molds, and kind of a pattern of life systems. It's reaching out, but it's reaching every direction it can go. And then when it finally finds a path, it's like it's pre.
It's not predetermined.
It's not predetermined, but it's preparing a path for conduction, for actual movement of the charge.
And it's funny, once it reaches and touches, the electrons go, oh, thank you for making the carpet.
Yeah. And
you made a carpet for me to follow that I can do fun stuff on.
Right. I'm going to the party now. Woo!
I got the directions.
But I don't know if that's like, maybe it's like a cold plasma, but
it definitely is cold plasma for sure.
But
absolutely.
Is it that a certain charge species, the positive side, has the ability to, at lower energy rates, actually create conduction channels?
There it is. You just described cold nuclear fusion, dude.
And using that conduction channel, then the charge is able to actually travel from the Earth out to the clouds and discharge it.
And when you have a lightning strike where all the electrons are flowing up to the clouds or whatever, and you touch that, you die. It's death. Like there's a difference between an arc and a spark, and we have a video on that, and that'll also be in the link description. But when you have the ARC reactor functioning, and it's not discharging electrons, it's just a pulsing, arcing action. The universe says, hey, you're creating a superposition state of where my idea of trying to discharge is being turned on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. You put the universe in a state of perpetual trying to figure it out. And when you do that, the dielectric, or the medium that's inside the reactor, basically functions as the quantum computer. It just instantaneously figures it out. I'm going to clean the radiation. I'm going to do something here. I'm going to do something there. And I'm going to heal you, or I'm going to do this or that. It has the power to do whatever you need it to do. All you have to do is make a wish. I want this.
And know how to ask right.
Well, that goes into another, like...
Well, that goes back to the tickling the ether kind of a thing.
And I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong or you disagree, that when you tickle the ether, you're actually tickling something that's inside the electron, this counterspatial reference point to the oscillation between the electron and the positron. Would you disagree with that?
Something's got to fill that conceptual gap, and I think that's as good of a place as any to start. I don't personally have evidence towards it, but it's certainly the concept of counterspace, the counterspatial dynamic with interplay between counterspace and space seems to me to be a very robust explanation for things, and you get that popping up in a lot of other areas of physics where people are trying to explain what we see going on in 3 space.
Yes.
But
it's multi-space.
But it's by saying that there's more space than just space.
Yeah.
And you see that in string theory with their 12 to 150,000 dimensions, whatever they're up to now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to say I don't know much or hardly anything at all about string theory, except that when I started reading it, I was like, that's a lot of math. And I didn't have the impression that I needed to imagine things in that symbol set at the time. So I worked in other directions.
I will say that when Einstein said that if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old, then your theory is probably not right. And I would say to that...
I've always had a very strong intuition that agrees with that.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. It's almost like you gravitate to what makes sense. And then it's not cherry pick what makes sense, but it's just in the laws of your mind, like, hey, that logically makes sense. Like if you go back to string theory, and I don't want to go too far into it because we're almost at an hour here, but like if you go into string theory, there's a lot of assumptions made by Michio Kaku, I think his name is, from the Japan.
I know the name. I don't
He
know
was the
much
one
about what
that
he
kind of
does.
really spearheaded that string theory stuff.
Okay.
But he makes, that theory makes a lot of assumptions, and a lot like general relativity, space-time continuum. Well, that's an assumption too.
Right.
And then there's another assumption with general relativity of where Einstein basically said there's a continuum of the photons. Like there's a one-way photon and there's a two-way photon. Like,
well,
he joined them all together into like, no, it's an assumption.
Right.
These theories are assumptions, not reality.
And assumptions are useful in that it gives you something to test. But if it's kind of like this unknowable kind of assumption set, that's the framework holding up, the scaffolding holding up your theory, and you're on a holding pattern, it's time to start reaching other directions. And I think there's a lot of theories out there right now that are in that class of things. So,
and just as we close up, I want to make it very abundantly clear that with all the theories out there and all the ideas out there, some are good, some are not so good, some are great, and when they're great, they get Nobel Prizes. But I'll say this:
sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, right. But I want to tell everyone that if you keep it super simple, KISS method, keep it simple, the way that I think about it, Bryton, is that there's always a duality, basically supersymmetry, but in a very different idea. That if you have a magnetic field, which is a fundamental, you have a north and a south. You have a male and a female. You have an electrostatic, which is positive and negative. You have matter and you have antimatter, positive and negative. If you keep it really simple and you have things that go forward in time and you have things that go backwards in time, if you keep it super simple and you design your circuits and ideas around that simple system and chaos theory and catastrophe theory, you can open up portals and doors that are just beyond your imagination. And this is why we can do cold nuclear fusion and sustain 200 million degrees for 24 hours and break the world record. And that is how you do it. You have to think outside the box, but keep it super simple.
Well, I think another one, you said 200 million degrees, but that made me think of the 100 million degree mark as kind of the fusion standard for having the right reaction conditions to obtain, like, this is where we start getting power out of the reactions, so it's plausible.
Right.
But we've had it turned on at 100 million degrees for a lot longer. Right?
We actually have the reactor running right now in this room, this lab. We have it at, 10,000 degrees to 100,000 degrees right now.
Yeah.
And
we can do that.
It's burning right now, and it's safe.
Yeah.
And it's doing things that, only...
Ongoing experiments.
Only in your... remember, truth is stranger than fiction. Like, when you discover cold nuclear fusion and we start implementing it into industry, everyone's lives are going to get so much better. And I can only begin to tell you what's happening. But on that note, Bryton, I think we should probably end. We're over an hour. We broke a record for podcasting on Quantum Kinetics.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
right on.
We haven't gone over an hour, but our producer's going to be a little mad at us. So thank you, Bryton, for coming on and talking with me about gravity, electrons, counter space, and all the great things that we do here at Quantum Kinetics. And we're super excited for the next episode. And also we're super excited for our first sponsor, Brilliant.org. And we're looking forward to more great things. And we will see you guys on the next podcast coming up in 2 weeks here. So Hope you guys do well, and thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem. It's good to have you.
Till the next time.
All right. See you guys.